You've assembled a fantastic menswear outfit, and now you'd like to immortalize it through photo. But how can you make sure that the outfit looks its best in these photos? Well, our videographers are here to explain. Today's video will be a conversation between two of our Gentleman's Gazette videographers, Chris and Graham, to tell you more about how to get the absolute most out of your outfit photos. So, without any further ado, I'll turn it over to Chris and Graham, and we'll let their conversation begin.
Hello everybody, I am Graham. I've been working with Gentleman's Gazette for just over a year. I started in about February of 2023, and seated across from me today is...
I'm Chris, and I've been with the Gentleman's Gazette for almost 5 years now. We're getting pretty close to that 5-year anniversary. And yeah, I've been running the camera behind the scenes for most of it, and you might have even seen me in a few videos, a few clips here and there, but I tend to stay behind the camera.
Let's just start with the basics. Probably the most important aspect of taking a good photo of your outfit is lighting. What do the audience members need to know about lighting, outside versus inside? Take it away.
Yeah, so the biggest thing and the biggest piece of advice I'll offer is find a good light source, right? If you have the luxury of the cool studio stuff we have here and a bunch of good lighting, that's great. But most people don't, living a normal day-to-day life, right? So the biggest thing, like I said, is the light source itself. Whether that's the sun, if you're outside, or inside, kind of using that same source, the sun, with being up close to a window, you want to make sure your light source is kind of up to the task. A normal lamp like this isn't going to do the job as well as using the sun outside or being at a window where you're getting that natural light from the outside if you want to be inside for whatever reason. So that's going to be the biggest secret for lighting, is just find a good light source, whether, like you said, you're inside or outside. Using the sun, using natural light is kind of the easiest thing to go to if you don't have a full studio setup like this.
And in terms of, where should you be positioned with a window, let's say, inside? Because I know that in the past, when I was early on in my photography journey, I made the mistake a couple times of being a little too backlit. So what is the importance of positioning?
Yeah, you want to make sure the light source, like we said, whether that's the sun or a cool light that you have to use for photos, for example, you want to make sure that light is pointed directly at your outfit from the front. So if you're at a window, be looking out the window is kind of what I like to tell people, because that way the light is coming in at your outfit and lighting up everything there properly, and then you don't run into your issue where everything is lit from the back and things look blown out and don't look good. You want to make sure the light is pointed at whatever you want to show off.
Yeah, so you've dialed in the lighting. The next stage is actually framing the photo itself. What are sort of the basics in terms of composition?
Yeah, really it's all about rule of thirds. If you've started your photo or camera journey, you've heard that word before, but essentially it just goes over how to frame a photo properly and divides your frame, whether that's through your phone or a camera, into a few different sections. The secret there is just don't have anything off to one side or the other. Kind of center it as best you can is the easiest way to get that rule of thirds right. But just make sure things aren't skewed or off to the side or even out of frame. If you can help it, obviously you want everything with your outfit to be shown off the best way possible, and the easiest way to do that is just make sure things are centered in the middle of the frame. If you want to get a little artsy with it, maybe add a little negative space on the top or the bottom, but essentially just making things centered is the easiest way to get a good outfit photo. Make sure you're all in the frame top to bottom, center it up as best as you can, and the outfit is going to look pretty good framing-wise at least.
And on top of that, obviously there's so many different areas to post your photos nowadays, and we'll be talking more about that in a little bit, but in terms of aspect ratios, obviously Instagram is going to have a different requirement versus posting something to a website and whatnot. So to talk more about that, what are some of the basics in terms of aspect ratio?
Yeah, that relates to framing your photo a little bit too, so I'm glad we brought that up. But essentially you want to at least think about a little bit where you're going to post that photo or where that photo is going to live, whether you're going to frame it and hang it on the wall or, like you said, post it to Instagram. You want to think a little bit about, when you're framing your photo, where it's going to end up. Like Instagram, for example, their post aspect ratio, or how they post a photo, is different than like a story, for example. So you want to make sure you think about all that stuff as much as you can beforehand, so that that one photo hopefully can be used in a many number of places, whether, like I said, that's online or something physical. That's going to be the biggest thing, is add a little space on the top and the bottom maybe to make sure things can be cropped a little bit, which we'll talk about in a bit. But really the secret, is just if you want to fill the frame as much as possible, that's great, because I recommend that for most things. But if you want to use the photo in many places, having a little bit of extra space so you can do a little bit more later is going to be the best way to keep things quick, but also future-proof them, so to speak.
Awesome. So now the focal length and perspective, I think, is something that people don't always consider, especially when they're starting out. So what insight can you give us on that?
Yeah, really, it's all about perspective at the beginning. You can worry about focal length if you have a camera and all that, which is a bit more of an advanced discussion. But essentially, perspective, you just want to think about how close your camera is to the actual thing you're photographing is the biggest thing I tell people. If you're using your phone and it has a few different lenses on, use that lens that zooms a little more further in so that you're a little bit farther away. If I was taking a picture of you and we're this close, the photo's going to look a little different versus if I back up a little bit and zoom in a little to get that perspective right. You want to make sure your facial features are shown off the best way possible. Nobody's going to be up in your space 2 feet from you looking at your outfit on a random Tuesday, for example. They're going to be looking at it from across the street or casually walking by you a few feet away. So you want to replicate that same perspective as much as possible, and doing that with a little distance between you and the camera is kind of the secret there.
So lighting, composition, perspective. I think something else that's really important is the amount of shots that you take of your outfit.
Totally.
You know, obviously if you're wearing multiple pieces, you know, you got cufflinks and pocket squares and a tie, you want to highlight those different features. So is that something that you like to do with your own outfits, is take multiple photos of the certain outfit?
Yeah, I kind of have adopted how we do things here with the Outfit Rundown, funnily enough, with just showing different things from the wide angle of the full outfit all the way to the different details when you have those, right? So if you have a pocket square and a tie, you can get up close on those as best as possible, but taking the wide shot of the full outfit so people can see how all the colors were together and how all the elements kind of blend or work together to kind of make you look as good as possible is important too.
Yeah, and you're taking photos of these close-up details, and I think something to really keep in mind is making sure that everything is aligned and looking good. And I know even when we've been doing video here, you know, one of the things we have to always watch out for is the pocket squaring correctly? Is the tie, you know, is the tie not good? How much time should you spend kind of really making sure those details are locked in?
Yeah, really as much time as you need to get them right, because that's the worst thing, is taking a photo and then zooming in a little bit and seeing, oh, my tie was not done right, or the knot was loose, or the pocket square was almost falling out and should have been way more tucked in than it actually was. So focus on that stuff before you start taking pictures. Make sure all those details are right, because the photo is going to look that much better when your outfit has just as much attention as the photo itself, is kind of what I'll recommend to people. Make sure everything's good, take all the time you need, because getting the photo right is just as much about the outfit being good as it is things like lighting and composition, like we talked about already. So.
And location
Yes,
is something
we do that all the time.
that I think is really important. You know, especially when you take photos, it's nice to go out, you know, if you live in a city, to go try out different areas. But there are some things that you have to consider when you go out into a more public space. And what are some of those things?
Yeah, the biggest thing is the amount of control you have over the space, right? If you have a cool space in your house, that's great, because you have more control over it. Nobody's going to be there walking through your frame. But like you said, if you're out in public, that's going to be the biggest thing, really, is dealing with other people. So if you can find a secluded corner, a secluded street, that's going to be great, because you get that benefit of being outside and having that as your backdrop, but you're not dealing with people photobombing your photo or walking by and interrupting what you're doing, walking through between you and the camera, so to speak. That stuff can get annoying after a while. It's going to work the best if you have the most control over your environment.
What's your favorite time of day to take a photo?
I have to say golden hour, right? As a photographer, whether that's sunrise or sunset, that great light during that time of day, the sun is going to be most directly pointed at you as a person on the earth, lighting you up from the front as best as possible. But really, other times of the day work too. Obviously, the light will look best at the golden hour, sunrise, or sunset. But if you can get out a little before or after those times, that still is okay. High noon, if that's all you can manage, is great too. Getting a cool location at noon or in the middle of the day still works, if that's all you can get. So just go out, have fun at any time of the day. But if you can do it at golden hour and get that great golden light as the sun is setting, for example, that's the best.
And in terms of stuff to bring with you, obviously if you have somebody to take the photo for you, this doesn't really apply. But if you're a solo shooter here, Tripod, no tripod? What are you kind of looking for?
Yeah, tripod's really going to be the best, like you said, if you're by yourself. If you can bring a friend, they can do that job for you, and the added benefit is they can direct you and help you out a little bit that way too. But if it's just you and you want to go out at a cool location and you found a great spot to take a photo, get a tripod or a way to mount your phone on something. You can do the whole prop it up against a pillar or somewhere like that, but that's just not the most elegant angle sometimes even. It's just, it could fall over, somebody could take your phone. There's tons of downsides there. If you have a little bit more of a dedicated setup like a tripod or a mount to put your phone on something, that's going to be the best to get the angle right so that you're not looking at it from the ground or looking at it from an awkward angle.
And, speaking of equipment and gear, I think this kind of transitions nicely into what we want to talk about in terms of what type of camera to use. As technology has advanced, obviously phone cameras are starting to improve. Sure. What are some of the biggest advantages that you're seeing with having your phone camera be your main camera?
Yeah, with your phone, it's just going to be the easy and kind of the automatic nature of it, right? If you're just starting, it's something you have with you already. You don't have to go out and buy a dedicated piece of gear if you don't want to. It's going to be quick. You just tap the button, the photo gets taken. You can worry more about the elements we talked about already, which is lighting and composition and stuff, and get that part of your thinking figured out first and not have to worry about the technicality of the actual picture taking. That can be a benefit there too. But it's just easy, right? You can click the button. You don't have to have an advanced person behind the camera. If it's just your friend who knows nothing about taking photos, they know just as much as you, and it's easy. You just hit the button, you're good to go. So that's the best thing about phones, is just how quick they are. If you want to get a little more advanced, there's that freedom too. Like we've briefly touched on before, phones have different lenses in them now to add some dimension to your photos that way. You can use these more advanced modes that let you dial in the specific settings yourself if you want to, but you can start basic with all the automatic settings, and it's just going to be easy. Like I said, tap the button and you're good to go.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting point that you talked about, with some of these more pro features that you're seeing on phones nowadays, but what are some of the drawbacks of those features?
Yeah, the same kind of automatics nature of it can be a downside if you want to get more professional. You have the capability to do that, but phones aren't always set up the best way to do some of those things. Otherwise, if you really get into taking photos, your storage can fill up pretty quickly since you don't have a dedicated place to put those photos. They live with your music and your videos and your movies and all that stuff on your phone, and it can get a little crowded with the storage if you're not careful. So that might be a downside too. And we've talked about perspective too. Sometimes that can be an issue with phones. If you just have one camera, for example, and not a nice iPhone 15 Pro with all these different lenses. So that could be a downside too, I suppose. But yeah, that's really it when it comes to downsides. The automatic nature is the best part about it all.
And, we talk about maybe upgrading then to a DSLR camera of some kind. Mm-hmm. I think people get a little bit hesitant in that department because they automatically assume that they have to pay these crazy prices in order to get good photos, but that's not really the case.
No, not always. You can visit different places to find used gear. I mean, it may sound I'd be a little cautious as with anything that's used, but used camera gear is usually taken, people usually take good care of their gear. It's usually well cared for. So you can visit places like eBay. You can go in personal places like thrift stores. Sometimes they have cameras. Even camera stores that sell new gear usually will sell used gear as well. So at that point, you have the added benefit of an expert looking at it before you. So as long as they give you the heads up, like, hey, this is broken or this isn't working or this is in good working order, you have as much information as possible.
So if you're looking not to break the bank and you're looking for a good starter camera kit, obviously this video is not sponsored, but what brands or models would you be looking for?
Yeah, at this point, I'd probably recommend something from Canon or Sony. They're kind of the best of the best, no matter what price range these days. The biggest thing I'd recommend, regardless of whatever brand you pick, is give a little bit more thought to it other than just what's affordable. What I like to recommend to people is buy something that you can see yourself using lens-wise years and years in the future. So if you want to buy a Canon camera now, make sure it will satisfy you if you want to be that advanced shooter in a few years that has more lenses, more cameras, so on and so forth. If you want to get better at taking photos, think about that future-proofing a little bit. But stuff from any of the camera manufacturers should get the job done at an affordable level. It's just a matter of, is it convenient in the future or not as well.
I like that you've been talking about lenses and whatnot. What is, like, if you had to pick one lens to start out with, and you could only pick one, what would that one be?
Probably something like a 15mm lens. It's kind of the next logical step after you get tired of your kit lens, which is perfectly usable. if you know how to use it. But the 50mm is going to get you a little bit more of a different look after that kit lens kind of tires you out a little bit. It's going to separate the background a little bit since they're usually like a 1.8 aperture. We won't get too much into the technobabble here if you're not interested in that. That's okay. But the 50mm 1.8 is something that most camera manufacturers sell too, so it's pretty universal of a recommendation at that point as well. But that's going to be something that's going to be pretty good for all kinds of shots of your outfits, whether that's the full body shot like we like to do here, as well as those more tight close-up shots. If I had to use one lens for this job and I was forced to, I wouldn't like it, but I could use a 50mm and get most of the stuff we do here without too much adaptation and too much kind of change of how things look at the end result. So
you've got all your gear,
yep.
You know the basics, you've taken your photos. The next step is the editing phase, which I know you're not a huge fan of doing too much editing, and a lot of the reason is because you want to get it right when you're actually taking the photos themselves.
Yeah.
You can't take an unusable photo and make it completely great. But if you are going to use some type of software or some type of app on your phone, what are some of the different components that you should be adjusting?
Yeah, like you said, I don't like to adjust too much. One of the things we hear in this job a lot is fix it in post, and fix it in the camera is what I tell people. Make sure it's good as early as possible if you can help it. But to your question, things like contrast, white balance, those kind of things, if you adjust those a little bit, saturation maybe even, can be things that help your photo look a little better. But like you said, adjusting them all the way to 100 probably isn't the best. It can make the photo look a little bit more like Instagram back in 2014 or something like that, versus something that's going to be clean and make sure your red tie doesn't become orange or vice versa or something like that, you know. All things in moderation. And yeah, just kind of add a little bit of something. Just make sure you're not, like I said, going all the way to 100% with all these effects, and then your photo looks completely like it's a cartoon and not a real life outfit photo that's meant to show off kind of all the stuff you want.
Are there, obviously again, this video is not sponsored, but are there certain platforms that you like to use for editing photos, ones that maybe you should avoid? What insight can you give?
Yeah, on a basic level, if even for me, somebody who's used all kinds of gear, all kinds of software, if it comes to my phone, for example, I just use the inbuilt Apple Photos app to add a little bit of these things. All these adjustments are basic, so most apps should let you change these things relatively easily. Sometimes I'll even use the auto editing feature. Shh, don't tell anyone. But it's just adds that little bit of pop that you might not get if your phone isn't set up the right way from the beginning. You can add some of these things as an in-camera effect too, if you just want to take the picture and be done right there. But I like to have a little bit of freedom to edit myself, so I'll use, like I said, the Apple app on my phone. But otherwise, the more advanced stuff, we use Adobe products for photo editing here at the office, and that's great if you want to take my camera out and go shoot something. But if it's just my phone, I just use whatever's on it, which is the Apple Photos app at this point.
We were talking earlier about sort of the different platforms that you can post photos to. What are the essentials in terms of cropping? Like how to properly crop a photo? I feel like there's sometimes some misinformation that gets out there.
Yeah, most of these platforms will kind of do that for you when you try to post a photo. So the biggest thing, like I said, is adding that space so that it'll adapt the best way possible. Like Instagram, for example, your post on their platform on your profile is a 4:5 aspect ratio, which not all phones shoot by default, so you want to add that space to crop in a little bit. Whereas their stories are a more 16:9, which is maybe more native to what cameras do by default. I'm not the expert in that either at this point. But just making sure the biggest thing is that you have room for cropping and not fill the frame all the way from top to bottom with everything you want to show off, and then you delete something when you have to crop or adapt to a platform. It's kind of my philosophy with all of that.
Awesome. Well, I think we've covered a lot of the big things that we wanted to discuss today. I think something that's really important is the idea of community and also sharing photos with people, getting that feedback. No matter where you're posting, whether it's Instagram or Reddit or what have you. I think having that feedback, whether you take that advice or not, is really beneficial as you go through this journey, whether you're just starting or if you've been doing it for years.
Yeah, for me, the community is the best part, whether it's the community for the menswear side of things with your outfit. People, if you take a friend with you that likes clothes as well, they can be the person that says, hey, your pocket square is a little weird, fix it. Or, hey, your tie's not straight, and you can be like, oh, that was intentional, I want to keep it that way. Yeah. Whatever it may be, and even on the other side, if you have somebody who also wants to get into taking photos, they can help you with framing and taking the photo instead of having to run back and forth with your phone all the time. So the community has its benefits practically, but then also just from a social standpoint. That's my favorite thing about both of these interests, clothes and cameras, is the community behind it and the people you meet and just the bonding that happens over those topics. So.
And I think something to also remember is that all of this is completely subjective too.
Oh yeah, already subjective, totally.
You know, there's the principles that you try to follow, but at the end of the day, what I might like might be different from what you like, and vice versa.
So far, yep.
Yeah, no, but that's kind of the fun thing, is you're able to bounce ideas off of each other, and the end goal is hopefully we're all taking great photos of our outfits. So
totally, yeah. You can learn something from me. I can learn something from you. A cool thing that you did. Oh, I'll do that, but do it this way next time. There's all these things out there that you can learn from and, like you said, bounce ideas off of, and you're just building community and building better photos at that point. So,
well, speaking of outfits, Chris, what did you choose to go with today?
Yeah, it's a somewhat elevated but basic summer outfit. I got a seersucker shirt that I found from a somewhat defunct department store brand called Denim and Flower, I think, but it looked good and it was cheap seersucker, so I couldn't say no there. I like the different stripe variety here too, and the texture of the seersucker always is cool for summer. Fort Belvedere trousers, this is a prototype chino that hasn't quite came out yet, but maybe we'll soon, we'll see. Might have to bug Raphael about that. Otherwise, then for my shoes is kind of the other big element here. That is a pair of espadrilles from a brand called Tony Pond's, I think. And they're a little bit different. They tie like a normal shoe, so they stay on a little better, but they got that espadrille structure, and that kind of construction is similar to a normal espadrille. So how about for you? What do you got on today?
Yeah, in the spirit of summer, I decided to go with a more classic prep look. I went with a blue polo from Ralph Lauren with some cream-colored trousers, and I paired them with my very trusty J. Butler loafers, which I love wearing this time of year. For my fragrance today, I'm wearing blue suede shoes from the Roberto Ugolini collection. I think it pairs well with my blue polo. If you want to find other fragrances from the Roberto Ugolini collection, as well as other classic menswear accessories, visit the Fort Belvedere shop here. And to finish it all off, I just put on one of my favorite watches, a Casio watch that I was given about a year ago as a birthday gift. I see that you have one on as well.
Oh yeah, I forgot to mention that. This is a Tissot PRX that I bought within the last year or two. This really cool blue dial was something they didn't launch at first, but came out a few years after. And so I really liked it. It just looks good with most outfits that I put it with, and there's some blue here, so it kind of worked today pretty well. So yeah, it's one of my favorites that I like to wear almost every day.
Chris, absolute pleasure. And if you have any insight at home in terms of how you like to put your outfit photos together, feel free to leave a comment in the comment section below.
Also, if you like seeing me in ground in front of the camera for a change, let us know. We're happy to do more videos, but we'll see how that goes.